Welcome, everyone. I'm Christina Ivazes with Placer County Public Health. This town hall meeting is being recorded and will be available later, including any of our Zoom fumbles, of course. Out of respect for our time, all attendees have been muted. And for those of you not familiar with Zoom, please use the question and answer function at the bottom to pose your questions, and panelists will answer to the best of their abilities during the question and answer time on the agenda. Also, because we have sensitive information that we're going to be sharing and discussing, just be mindful of any children that may be around and use your best judgment. First of all, I'd like to say thank you to Granite Wellness Centers for hosting this town hall, Placer County, to the Coalition for Auburn and Lincoln Youth, to the panel guests and you attendees, because we know your time is precious. This town hall is part of an urgent call on the heels of the recent fentanyl poisonings and other opioid overdose deaths in our county of middle school, high school, and adult community members. Opioids are deadly and they don't discriminate. There are just too many stories of loss impacting our families, youth, and Native populations, and other special populations. These tragedies have a ripple effect on our community, and we hope what we learned today will help us all be part of preventing further loss of precious lives. Another aim tonight is to reduce the stigma surrounding any substance use, because this can happen to anyone. Feeling safe and comfortable enough to reach out for support is what we want you to leave with this evening, along with resources you may need. Resources shared today, along with the transcript of the questions and answers, will be emailed to everyone following the webinar. Now, Placer County has been actively working on prescription drug prevention efforts since 2010. We've removed over 83,000 pounds of prescription medications from our homes and environment. And we know that approximately 50% of people who misuse opioids get them from someone they know. Today in Placer, we have 15 permanent drop-off sites for unwanted medications. And on April 24th, the DEA drug take-back will be at 4 different county locations. And this information as well will be shared in our resources at the end of the town hall. However, fentanyl is an opioid. And while prescription opioid misuse is connected with some fentanyl poisonings, this is an entirely different and urgent threat. Because of its potency, as little as 2 milligrams of fentanyl can be deadly, approximately the size of a crushed grain of rice. Deaths are occurring because this is a game of Russian roulette, with people not always knowing they're consuming fentanyl or a deadly dose. With the intent to increase profits and addictions, it's being added to most street drugs, and now even in some vape pens and cannabis, and most disturbingly, in an underground industry of fake manufactured prescription medications that look identical to those prescribed, like Xanax and Percocet. So even a single pill can take a life. To compound these challenges, we know that the impacts of mental health have increased during COVID, and so have substance use and misuse, increasing these fentanyl poisonings. Unfortunately, while many have been affected by the opioid epidemic, it's a recent tragedy of a single pill that brought us here together this evening. Our panel guests will share their perspectives with a question period following, using your responses in the question and answer tab. They will respond to any unanswered questions to the best of their abilities and shared soon after the webinar. We don't know if we'll have too many questions or not. So right now we'll start with Laura Didier, the mother of Zach Didier.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming to this very important evening of information. Tragically, I am here to put a face on this. And this is the face. This is Zach Didier, my beautiful youngest child. He was 17 years old a very high-achieving high school senior at Whitney in Rockland. He was a standout athlete, a standout academic achiever, 4.0 throughout his high school career. He starred in the school musical right there. He was Troy Bolton. He was able to do all his performances right before the lockdown. So we were very proud to see that. He set high goals. He worked very hard to achieve them. He had not had issues around substance misuse. So we were completely blindsided when he was found dead in his room on December 27th, 2020. Just literally 3 weeks before, I had been sitting at that desk with him, helping him finalize his applications for the UC system. We have since gotten acceptances since his passing for UC Santa Cruz, UC San Diego, UCLA, UC Santa Barbara. That's just the caliber of person that he was. He was beloved by everyone who knew him, and his family and his friends, just a giant hole in our family. It was not a risk that we even were aware of when they came to the house to see if they could resuscitate Zach. It was tragically too late. It looked like he'd just fallen asleep at his desk. There was no sign of trauma to him. There was no evidence of drugs in his room, any evidence of drug use. So we were completely baffled. The first time I heard fentanyl was when the coroner said, "I am going to speculate that that is what killed your son." I had no idea of these pressed counterfeit pills. I had no idea that they were being marketed on social media. And as soon as we started putting all the pieces together, of course, our community, neighborhood, friends, family wanted to know what happened to Zach? Why is he gone? When we started sharing, as we were putting the pieces together, started sharing what we found out, we were really surprised to know that we were not the only people who had never heard of this. And this risk, it's a newer risk that's out there. There are often no warning signs. So it's like a bomb goes off in your family, and it's a demographic of people that didn't used to die from experimentation or an occasional recreational use. But with the introduction of fentanyl and this illicit fentanyl and its proliferation, this is the demographic that is growing. Sadly, we've come to know so many other families. Now that we have reached out and gone public with our story in an effort to educate, we have become acquainted with just a tremendous number of families who have experienced the same thing, with the same being blindsided, learning about things they hadn't known before. And we have joined together and making it our mission to educate and protect our other young people and young adults. And I appreciate being invited to be here tonight.
Thank you, Laura. Next panelist.
Yeah, thanks. My name is Rob Oldham, and so I'm the Director of Health and Human Services for Placer County. And first, just want to say thank you to Laura for sharing your story and for the courage to come on. So I'm so sorry for your loss, and really appreciate you sharing your story with us tonight. And thanks to everyone for joining. I know Laura doesn't want to be here, but I know this is not the most uplifting topic for a Tuesday evening, but really appreciate everyone coming together. We've had other tough public health topics that we've been talking about over the last year or so. I just came back to Placer County. I was working, previously was the health officer here, and came back about 6 months ago during the pandemic. And one of the things that I was learning about, actually, as Laura says, and Christina was saying, we've been working on overdoses, an overdose deaths for many years, and opioids in particular for many years, including the prescription drug takebacks, and working with our physician community. I'm a physician, working with them to try to address physician overprescribing of opioids. And so fentanyl is nothing new. Fentanyl is a pain medication. It's a very strong pain medication, often used for people who have cancer and really severe pain. It can be 100 times more powerful than morphine. So part of the reason, as Christina said, just a little bit of fentanyl adulterating a pill can be lethal. And so it's not new. It's been around for a while. Just over the last, we've been looking at overdose deaths certainly since 2014, 2015 when I came here. We see, unfortunately, average of 40 to 50 overdose deaths per year in Placer County. It's actually the epidemiology is similar to suicide, another topic that we kind of care deeply about and looking at. So it's rare enough where it's hard, it's tough to make inferences and see trends sometimes, but it's really clear, particularly now when we look at national and now state data. I just got a report from the state last week showing a significant increase in overdose deaths over the last really less than a year, and in particular opioid-related overdose deaths, and it seemed to be related to fentanyl. And we think, unfortunately, Laura and Zach's story this is what's happening over and over again. So we're putting the pieces together, and kind of we don't have perfect data yet to know what's going on, but in public health, we don't need to wait for perfect data to take action. So really appreciate everyone organizing this tonight so we can share information, share resources. One of the things I really tried to advocate for is having Narcan or naloxone, the rescue drug, to reverse opioid overdoses, can work on fentanyl as well, but certainly the other opioid overdoses. And then getting, like Christina was saying, reducing the stigma, so people who are suffering from opioid use disorders and other substance problems can get the help they need. It's available. I think we've done a lot as a coalition to build those resources and to make them more available. So I guess those are my two take-home messages. This is looks like the next phase of our opioid epidemic, unfortunately, involves some of these pills adulterated with fentanyl. So we need to do more messaging to younger people, maybe people who in the past we've been messaging to folks who had long-standing substance use disorders, but now, unfortunately, lots of kids, like the story we just heard, who didn't really have any risk factors before. We need to be messaging to really strongly, certainly about not using medications that don't belong to you. So again, thanks so much for coming, and I guess I'll hand off to Alexa.
Thank you, Rob, and thank you also, Laura, for sharing your story and moving this topic forward to help our community. I'm Alexa Curtis, and I'm a family and psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner and co-director of the Youth Resiliency Project at Granite Wellness. And in that capacity, one of the things that I do is I work to treat substance use disorders, and in particular, opioid use disorder. And the biggest issue that I see is getting people to treatment. And if you look at the data on why people don't get treatment, the three top reasons are: one, they don't think they need it or they aren't ready; and two, they don't know how to find it; and three, they're concerned about stigma and possible punishment. So to address these issues, I'll start with number one. That's why we're here today. Those people who don't think they need it or aren't ready or aren't aware of the potential lethal consequences of a single episode of experimentation. And at Granite Wellness, in collaboration with our colleagues at other organizations, we take a harm reduction approach. We meet people where they are at in their trajectory to readiness to change. And we work to increase safety around substance use, no matter where the person is in that readiness to change. And so Rob already talked about the importance of having Narcan available throughout the community. We at Granite Wellness are a community distributor of Narcan, and we also have limited number of fentanyl test strips. So please do spread the word on the importance of Narcan within our community. So number two, people don't know how to find treatment, there's treatment all throughout Placer and Nevada County. This is a great movement that has happened. Granite Wellness, Chappaday, Western Sierra, Stallant Health, Aegis, Forest, Tahoe Forest, just to name a few. If you are thinking about wanting to find treatment, one place to start would be Placer 211. You can search it, or you can call it, and on there you hit substance use, and it will give you a list of treatment providers. And then number 3, concern about stigma and possible punishment. At Granite Wellness Centers, we pride ourselves on being a supportive, judgment-free zone, and I know that sentiment is shared with our colleagues at other organizations. We aspire to be a barrier-free access site, including the recent development of a youth drop-in service. So youth can come in, no questions asked, no barriers, come back, talk to one of our providers. I will tell you that one of the biggest questions we get when we do youth outreach in populations where people will tell us they use or they have friends that use, top question we get is, do my parents need to know if I come get treatment? So the answer to that is youth can come to us confidentially for behavioral health services, but if we are going to prescribe medications to treat opioid use disorder, it does require parental consent. Those issues are navigated on an individual basis, but I encourage you to think through how you going to have that conversation with youth in your life, how you're going to create a bridge to services for them or their peers if they're concerned about possible punishment. I also want to point out that there are federal non-discrimination laws for people who are treated for opioid use disorders, and there's Good Samaritan laws for people that get care for people, including the administration of Narcan for people with opioid overdose. So, what we do when you come to us, we provide medication to treat opioid use disorder, buprenorphine, and behavioral therapies. So I will pass it to Christian, and he can talk more about our work with youth. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexa. My name is Christian Kudo. I am an adolescent substance use disorder counselor for Granite Wellness Centers. I'm also a father of 4, and I've been living in this community for the better part of 15 years. One of the things that I would like to kind of start with and touch on is how powerful this synthetic opioid is. I think Rob mentioned that it's up to 100 times more potent than morphine, and up to 50 times more powerful than heroin. This is a drug that a very small dose can be lethal. I've been in this community for a long time. I'm a founding member of the Auburn Hip Hop Congress. I spend a lot of time listening to, teaching, and most importantly, I believe, learning from the youth in our communities. And this is something that does not discriminate. It doesn't matter how rich you are, how poor you are, what color your skin is. One of the things that we're running into in this community are these counterfeit prescription pills. A lot of people ask me, they say, Christian, why would they be making prescription pills to look, or counterfeit pills to look like prescription pills? It's actually quite easy. If you look on social media, if you look on the music, television, movies, there are a lot of drugs that are glorified in our communities. In music especially, they talk about Xanny bars and purple perk 30s and all these different things. And so drug dealers and drug cartels are lacing or creating counterfeit pills. You can buy a press online, and they're basically making these and they're selling them to the kids in our community. A lot of the kids don't have a big, long history of addiction. This could be the first time that they've been to a party and they've had alcohol. So this is something that is very important that we as a community, we come to terms with and we start to discuss. At Granite Wellness Centers, we offer a whole lot of different programs. You know, like Alexa mentioned, we have our medication-assisted therapies. In adolescence, I do groups, I do individual sessions. We meet with a therapy team. We do a educational and a early intervention program. And we do also rely on harm reduction. You know, we can give out Narcan and fentanyl test strips. You know, we have a lot of resources on our website, www.granitewellness.org. We have a warm line that's that we'll put in there as well. What I can say is, if you need help and you need resources, reach out. Spend some time talking to your children. Listen to your children. Find out what they're experiencing. You know, a lot of these overdoses and poisonings that have been happening have hit this community and have hit your children. Ask them questions. Spend a little time listening to what they have to say. You know, these are all very uncomfortable topics, but as parents and as community members, it's important that we give our children the opportunity to be educated on these important topics and also take the time to listen to them. Thank you.
Thanks, Christian. My name's Sergeant Ty Connors. I'm with the Placer County Sheriff's Office. Been with the Sheriff's Office for about 25 years. I'm currently assigned as a community service sergeant and also deal with the school resource officers. I appreciate being asked to be on the panel, but first of all, I want to thank Laura for being here and sharing your story. And, you know, with Zach, you know, being part of a musical, look at his audience now. I mean, we got 186 people on here that are going to carry his story on for him. So he's gonna, his voice will be heard forever and be the hero for others to save their lives on how dangerous this is. So he's keep doing that musical for us. Okay. I just want to kind of give you a little bit of some stats of what's going on as far as with the Sheriff's Office. As you know, the Sheriff's Office is the coroners. We have a coroners division. I kind of pulled some stats that we had. Some of the stats we have for current year, we're behind like 30 to 60 days just because of the toxicology reports that come through. So the 2020 years might be a little what they should be. But it was 2019, we actual confirmed fentanyl tests that were contributed to our fentanyl. So in 2019, we had 3. In 2020, we had 24 fentanyl deaths, confirmed fentanyl deaths. And then 2021, basically this is calendar year from January to present, we've had 7. Now, when I looked at back into 2020, that say from January to our most recent for 2021, there was 3 deaths in 2021 from January to March 3rd. In 2021, from the same time period, we've had 7. So we've went over 100%. We've doubled our count just within a 3-month period. So if we're going on that rate, definitely 2021 is going to have a much higher rate of fentanyl deaths. So that's obviously why we're doing this. And again, what's kind of the last death in 2020 was Zach, and this is why we're here. So we're beginning off a new year off of Zach's sacrifice that he did. So yeah, like say Narcan, Christian pointed on, and Dr. Oldham pointed on a few topics when it comes to Narcan. What our office is doing, we fall under the local emergency medical service authority as far as the distribution and use of Narcan. We issue Narcan out to every patrol deputy that's on. They get a medical bag, and Narcan is in that medical bag in every patrol car. Narcan, also Narcan is distributed to all the correctional officers in the jail, to our evidence staff, because when they're dealing with handling evidence with and fentanyl. So we have kind of Narcan all over the place that hopefully, you know, kind of, we've had multiple uses. It's kind of hard to track. We're working on that on a better, how many times a law enforcement officer has distributed Narcan, but we've had several. And a lot of times these uses have saved people's lives. So Narcan is a huge, it's not a treatment, but it definitely is something that will help prevent someone from, you know, overdose. As far as our enforcement goes, I've reached out to our special investigations unit. That's kind of our undercover type guys. It's made up of the Placer County DA's office, different agencies through Placer County are on the special investigations unit, our special operations unit, which is internal, and then patrol. All of them have seen increases when it comes to the possession cases of fentanyl. When I talk to our SIU guys, they have partnered with the DEA. They're doing focused investigations on locating the primary sources where fentanyl is coming in from. A lot of it is coming from Mexico when it comes to these fake pills that are getting distributed. One thing, he made a contact a while ago with a cartel member. He actually made the comment that they really like the fentanyl part of it because it's highly addictive. It's more addictive than heroin. And so obviously what they want to do is increase their sales. So they want to make a product that's going to be more addictive that more people want. So that's why they're doing it. And when it comes to, obviously, and then they look at the platforms or how do you go about distributing it, and they're focusing on the younger groups. You have social media. And then Snapchat is hard to trace because as soon as they post something about it, then it's erased and deleted. So it's hard to trace on something like that. So our SIU unit and our spec ops units, they are doing they do undercover social media accounts, trying to target these type of sellers and hopefully, get them into try to do a buy with one of our undercover guys under social media who's acting like a teenager. So, one thing that kind of was interesting with talking with the investigators and kind of what their thoughts are is, why pill form? And when you look at kids and growing up and everything, pills are just prescribed by doctors. They're there to help us, to make us better. And they can look up, they kind of do their own self-assessment online of what the effects are of certain pills. And they go, well, if it says I only take this much after every hour, I'm safer doing it that way instead of going out and getting heroin or meth and doing something that way. They look at that pills kind of like a safer way of, if you're going to do some kind of testing or kind of trying things out. And so that's kind of why they think they're kind of going for that. And like Christian said too, like Xanax and Percocet are the kind of the primary ones they go for. Xanny bars is a thing that they call it. And then the M30s, which is the Percocet, it's like a stamped M30 on the pill. To an adult who deals with medications, they look fake, but to a kid, it's not. And so that's one thing that they've seen really why it's kind of going to that pill form. And then, like say the pills mixed with a binder, but and then with a little bit of fentanyl in it. And when the kid's looking online saying that, hey, the Xanax says I'm safe to use this much, when it's a fake pill, that's why, again, they get into trouble. What are we doing as a sheriff's office? Like say we're monitoring social media as best we can through, all our investigations. And we're trying to, our SIU and our spec ops are doing as much as they can with their investigations. But one thing what we can do to tell everyone that's online right now is, watch for the change of behavior, look for grades, socialization, stress, appearance, who they're hanging out with, friends they've hung out with years, all of a sudden have changed. All those subtle little changes are things that, try and notice it and trying to catch it early. And like Christian said too, is be brutally honest of what can happen. Don't hide anything from your kid because you think it's too much for them to know. They need to know what's going to happen if they decide to go out and to get involved with something like that. So, and I'll turn it over, I guess, to someone from Sutter Auburn Face, but thank you very much.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Jody Norell, and I am part of the Sutter System Mental Health and Addiction Care Team, serving on behalf of Sutter Auburn Hip Faith and Sutter Roseville, our hospitals that are anchored there in Placer County. Our Sutter Health System, we have 21 hospitals in the Northern California region, and began noticing the trends in opioid overdoses and opioid diagnosis is coming into our acute care settings as early, back in 2018, 2019. And then thankfully, a shout out here to Rob, in 2020, Rob and our mental health and addiction care team applied for a state grant that targeted and supported emergency room department care for opioid use disorder and diagnosis, which would really assist the emergency room providers and treatment team with medication-assisted treatment for opioid use disorders, as well as allowing us to hire substance use navigators in each of our emergency room departments to support patients and families navigate the system. And I think as Alexa mentioned, you know, Placer County has a really robust treatment continuum, and Sutter Health is very excited to now step into the fray in both of our emergency room departments to serve as a point of care for individuals that are presenting in an acute crisis with opioid use or substance use challenges. Our substance use navigators in both of the hospitals in Placer County will be up and running on July 1st and can serve as a community resource. We'll share their numbers. You can call them if you have questions. You don't have to have a family member or be in the emergency room department to access their care or their resources. The teams there on site now are currently undergoing training and onboarding to better assist with our data collection. I think Rob mentioned, you know, the data on this is it's not great yet. It's developing, and the better we can get a handle on the severity of the situation, then we can tailor our approaches. Just to frame it up for the Placer County audience, we've begun to run some baseline data on opioid overdose in our emergency room departments, and there were 15 alone in March between Sutter Auburn Faith and Sutter Roseville, and collectively across all of our emergency room departments there were 168. So you know, we're going to be able now with the help of this grant to be able to track our trends. There was also 88 patients that presented with an opioid use diagnosis last month between both of those emergency room departments. So we're really excited to be able to augment the existing treatment continuum there in Placer County and connect with the community-based organizations that are doing the amazing work on the outpatient ecosystem. And we're also moving towards the Narcan kits. So when somebody exits our emergency room departments, they will have access to the Narcan kit that Rob mentioned and several other of the presenters mentioned in the event that that is needed for an opioid overdose. Thank you. I'll pass it on to Jamie.
Hello, hello. Thank you so much. I first just really want to give a lot of love to Laura and her family, and thank you for providing this opportunity and allowing us to talk about this. It has to be talked about. There are two things we're looking at in this situation. You're looking at a prevention and you're looking at an intervention. Where I come from is the prevention. I'm the community vibes keeper. I'm the youth advocate. I'm the one that the kids come to before the problem. So just a little bit about what I do. Right now, I'm currently Sacramento's artist residence with Sacramento Heart. It's called Healthy Hearts program, and we do art integration into our school system to help our students who are going through depression or going through chronic absenteeism, students who are not showing up to class, and potentially those students that may have some sort of trauma. So we work with students to provide healing components collectively. Things like music, hip hop education, arts. We run programs like Signs of Love in our own school district, where we provide opportunity for students to come up with mottos to help get themselves through situations. I'm also on the Auburn Union School District. I'm one of the board trustees. And through that, I've been able to witness the help of Placer's wellness centers in our own schools. So right now, Evie Kane has experienced tremendous grief. Our teachers have worked with, some of our students have lost their lives. Our students have lost their friends. So Placer Wellness has provided the opportunity for students to have a comfortable, safe place to speak, to be there, for teachers to grieve. You know, there's no procedure on how to grieve. And if we're not coming together as a community, how are we supposed to collectively heal? So through things like Placer Wellness Center, Sacramento's Healthy Heart. I'm also a part of the Auburn Police Chief Community Council, and we're working towards building a trauma-informed community. And that's approaching situations differently. You know, coming in with a situation saying, is everybody okay? Not, what's the problem here? It's completely different. So we're changing our culture right now. Because, Laura, because of what happened to your family, we get to change culture. We get to stop, we get to look each other in the eye, and we get to come together. And so through this unity, I use music. Music is my stepping stone. I'm a hip hop educator. I'm an artist. I'm signed to Universal Records. I love music. Everything I do is music. So we provide that mentorship for whatever these students' passions are. I run a nonprofit called Beats Lyrics Leaders. We run conferences to help youth find their voice. We run programs called Pipeline to Politics, and it's how to advocate for yourself. And that's something we need to be able to provide for these students, an opportunity to advocate for themselves. They're not asking us for help, and they should be. They should be able to come to us and say, hey, mom, hey, dad, hey, teacher, hey, auntie, hey, uncle, I'm having an issue here. So we have to provide that culture, and that's kind of what I do. That's how we network and work together. Currently, for anybody that's out there, we just invested in something called the Creative Wonder Lab. It is a musical haven for students to come and just experience and build. And there's a plethora of knowledge, there's a plethora of mentors and mentorships and adults wanting to help these students. So I'll leave it at that, but thank you for having me, and I just appreciate the opportunity to just even discuss this.
Thanks, Jamie. My name is Braden. I'm a student at Whitney High School. I'm kind of here to offer a teen perspective, you know, come at it from like, you know, someone who's a peer, maybe your kid or someone like that. Things that I've noticed. So with that, let's get right into it. So let's just start with how easy it is for like me. Like if I wanted to, I could get a hold of this super easily. Like I could pull up, like Snapchat is the go-to. You may think you're on your teen's Snapchat if you have them friended, if you watch them, if you watch their stories, they can hide their stories from you. They can create private stories. It's really simple. So I would, like, if you want to get buckled down on Snapchat, inspect it. You want to get on that app with them, you know, that would be my best advice as far as that goes. But on Snapchat, you could, like, they could pull up a dealer's story and they could have a whole menu. This menu could have lists of things, and it's very easy to get a hold of. And some of these dealers will go out of their way to drive it to your teen at your house, at a park. It's easy to get a hold of. They could have it in minutes to hours. It's very easy to get a hold of. So with that, like, why would your teen want to pick this up? And from what I've noticed, like some of my peers, is like, it's an excitement thing. Like they want to experiment and they want to see what it's like. A lot of them just think that, you know, maybe you as parents have experimented, and then so they think that it's okay. And like it's not, you know, it's like that. They're teens, they're not mature enough yet. It's just the facts. Sometimes they are, sometimes they aren't. That's for you to decide as the parents. But when they're experimenting, sometimes that can lead to coping or just having fun. Like you can have fun other ways than substances. Substances is hard, like it's not there yet. Coping can get, it leads down a dark path. So that's just from what I've noticed why teens pick it up. It tends to lead from experimenting to coping or fun. It could be other things too. It kind of just depends on the teen, but that's just what I've noticed are the big ones. And it can lead down a very, very dark path. So like I said, these are not the only reasons, but the next step you'd want to do is have a conversation with your teen. You know, you don't have to suspect anything. Your teen could be, you know, the like perfect student. Of course, like you are a good parent. Like you're here, that makes you a good parent. So just have a conversation with them. Just have a one-on-one. Like, it doesn't have to be about anything, you know. Just make sure that you know that, like, your team knows that they can go to you, and make sure that, like, you know, it's an open conversation, you know. And if you do suspect something, you know, that could be part of the conversation as well. But you don't have to suspect anything to have that conversation. Just have the conversation. It'll make it easier for them to go to you if the conversation does need to come up. So with that, you know, I would just say make sure you have that conversation. I just have a good evening. Thank you so much for attending. Like, it's been great.
Thank you, Braden. I just have to say that the questions in the chat are really good, and really appreciate all the panelists taking that time to answer these questions on here. I'd like to say something just at the very beginning, because we had a lot of references to Narcan. And maybe just briefly, Alexa, without just reading it right now, can you explain what Narcan is and what its purpose is?
Hi, yeah, thank you for the question. So what Narcan does is it reverses the effect of opioids. It comes in and it pushes the opioids off of the receptors, and then it reverses the symptoms of overdose, which are primarily respiratory depression, the respiration stop. And Narcan, you know, no real side effects that we know of. It's an extremely safe medication for people to administer in the community setting.
Thank you, Alexa. And I know that the distribution of Narcan is through several organizations in our county. And Ty, would you like to just say a little bit about, you know, where we're at with that right now when it comes to schools and students?
Yes, actually, I just had I talked to with Jeff Tooker the other day. He's one of the superintendents for the Placer Union High School District, and asked about, you know, Narcan on school campus. And Carrie, I think it's Marda's from the county health, or she works with the schools with the medical side of it. So we are looking at kind of generating maybe a working committee to kind of, because we have 16 school districts in Placer County. So, you know, there's a lot, and all the school districts kind of run a little bit differently. Obviously, I think getting Narcan onto the school grounds, or onto at least to the medical staff that's there, I think is be a huge benefit. You know, when it comes to, a lot of them say, hey, we just call 911. Well, sometimes it's just going to be too late. So we need to take a little quicker action. And so I'm going to be working with the school districts on the use of Narcan and having it readily available to them, but also how we what's the best way that we can get it out to, you know, families, and, you know, what can we do about getting out information about how deadly this is. And like right now we have 184 people on this call. That's, you know, there's a lot more parents in all the many school districts, and a lot of people that get information out too. You know, we have a lot of, you know, a lot of work ahead of us to try and get that information out, but that's going to be one of my primary goals, you know, taking on this new position and getting that information out and coming up with a plan.
Thank you. And I like to kind of second Jamie's point that, you know, Narcan that's the last step. That's to save the life. It's when we've already gone that far. So, and of course, one pill can do it, or one dose of anything can kill somebody. And the Narcan is very important, but we really want to make sure that we're covering all the bases. And it's a very difficult situation. And talking, I know there's so many people on here talking about, you know, what else can we do? What else can we do? Does anybody have any thoughts about what might be a good way to discuss this? Especially, you know, one of the things that came up for actually one of my grandsons recently, I was talking to Shelley about this, that maybe there are some experimental drugs out there that students might not even realize would have fentanyl. And how do we talk to them and still keep that open, non-judgmental space for them, so that they can understand that there might be other options for them, and just to be careful? Does anybody want to take that?
Christina, can I jump in and quickly on Narcan, and then then redirect us back to what you're saying. You know, there's, in one of our treatment groups, there's a person who grew up in my son's peer group, and to hear him talk about, and with his partner, long-term partner now, about how many times he was Narcaned. His partner and their peer group Narcaned this fabulous young person 5 times. 5 times. Because they had Narcan, this fabulous young person who is now just doing incredibly great is alive because Narcan was available.
Thank you. Can somebody talk about the chocolate chip analogy, which is really, really a great way to understand what we're dealing with? Sergeant or Christian?
I would love to. Someone asked in the chat a little while ago if, you know, we could test a partial pill, and if that came back fentanyl free, if they could take it. So I think that's where the chocolate chip cookie analogy comes in. Like a chocolate chip cookie, you may take a bite and have 3 or 4 chocolate chips in that bite. You may take a bite and have no chocolate chips in the bite. The problem with these counterfeit prescription pills is that it takes a very, very little amount of fentanyl to cause an overdose. And so when you're dealing with these counterfeit pills, you know, the half that you test may have the fentanyl in it and it may not. So what I tell people that I work with is to, if you have fentanyl test strips, you can test the entire pill. If it comes back that there's no fentanyl in it, then you could still take the pill. I mean, it's in liquid form at that point, but you got to be really careful about just trying half of it, because like a chocolate chip cookie, that half could have no fentanyl in it, or no chocolate chips, or it could have all of it. And because it takes a very small amount of fentanyl to cause an overdose, it's not worth, it's like playing Russian roulette. It's not worth gambling your life.
Thank you. Is there anybody that would like to talk about, I mean, I know the mental health issues, the isolation, this has been a really difficult year. We're going into 13 months. Well, we're almost past 13 months now. Does anybody have any thoughts that we can look at, you know, before, I mean, this isn't easy. This is not easy. Go ahead, Jamie.
I'll step in on this just because I think it's as simple as asking a student if they're okay. Hi, how are you? How's your day today? But it's also as hard as developing that trust. So it's not just a one-time occurrence of, hi, how are you? You know, it's a consistent run through. But right now I've noticed these students, they're learning to re-socialize. So for us, I have students that want to Zoom and have no boundaries, and they'll consistently text me, can we get on a Zoom right now? Or I've seen Christian Kudo consistently on the phone because someone needs to talk, and someone has a story, and someone has a narrative, and someone has a problem. But it is really as easy as listening and asking, just ask questions. You want to not judge, don't give an answer. Don't come up with a solution. Just listen. So I really do believe it's that simple, but again, it's as hard as developing that trust. So consistency pays off.
Thank you, Jamie. Thank you. Somebody's asking, what are some other things that we can be looking for in our teens, not just the conversation, but some indicators where there might be opioid usage? Somebody comfortable to answer that?
Well, I did mention a little bit on that when it comes to, you know, kind of the recommendations from some of our, you know, detectives that are out there dealing with this a lot is, you know, kind of that the socialization, you know, the stress, even appearance, you know, and just kind of like, you know, I mean, like say you trying to look at kind of their behaviors and how they're acting. Once there's kind of little subtle changes of something, is that a precursor to something going on or not? But it's just taking notice, like you say, is just making sure that pay attention to the stuff that's going on, and make sure that our daily lives, we're busy, we're task saturated with a bunch of stuff, but we need to take a break. We need to stop, and we need to pay attention, to our kids.
Mhm.
And not saying that parents will be don't, but there's many a times now, as being a new grandpa, I'm noticing things that it's like, man, I'm stopping, just gonna like stop and smell the flowers, like kind of that saying. It's the same thing with your kids. You just really pay attention to what's going on in their lives and what they're doing, and take interest in it. If they see that you're always on the phone, work's always around, and you're not having that engaged conversation of just saying, having a one-on-one, sometimes you miss a lot of stuff. So
That's, even if they don't think they act like they don't want you around, still being there and doing it. Yeah. Just pressing forward. No, that's really,
like say that, there's a lot of groups out there, and actually some interesting things, help, like say what grasps kids, what is kind of helps that information absorb into them. Hearing it from your parent is one thing, but hearing from a stranger is another. I think Laura and Zach's, story is very impactful when it comes to stuff. Like we do the every 15-minute with kids with DUIs, and we do the reenactment, and they see what's going on. It's very impactful. But like say the National Guard, they've reached out. The National Guard is doing a program as far as drug demand reduction, and they want to help out as much with the youth, and having a helicopter and National Guard and all that stuff that's kind of cool, but then they have a story to go with it and to help out. Sometimes they might absorb that information a little bit more. So, again, we're trying to reach out as best we can, thinking outside the box, but like I say, even with the parents, trying to get some input from them too.
we're going to be starting to close here in just a few minutes, but so many great questions and good responses in here. One thing I'm just going to throw out here quickly, why would drug dealers want to do this? But they're trying to make it, to where they can get people addicted. They're not necessarily, focused on killing, probably, hopefully not. But when you're manufacturing anything, in your home, in your garage, it's not being regulated. I mean, just a little bit can be detrimental. But I wanted to ask, if anybody knows, and maybe Dr. Oldham, you can speak to this, if there is a plan to increase mental health services right now, because I know that's been very understaffed with the needs. Unfortunately, as soon as like Medi-Cal, for example, takes can cover mental health counselors and treatment right now, but we have a lack of providers. Is there any movement to increase these resources?
Yeah, thanks, Christina. And actually, the number of mental health services has actually increased. So yeah, early in the pandemic, we moved a lot of the services to telemental health. We actually have continued doing face-to-face services, but the total number of services has increased kind of system-wide for mental health services. But I think when talking to our providers, they're seeing, the acuity, the severity of symptoms of existing patients that they're having has gone up quite a bit. But yeah, we're actually in pretty good shape on like psychiatrist providers right now, relative to some other times that we've been, because the telemental health has helped our capacity a little bit, but certainly we anticipate that, especially as more people are getting back to work and getting back to school, there's some pent-up demand, and so we're gearing up for that. Actually, starting a pilot to bring on a crisis, some additional crisis services at Kirby Hills in Placer County, but I know other counties are also kind of focusing on that, trying to ramp up and be ready for kind of additional demand for mental health and, I'll say, substance use disorder services. A similar trend where we're seeing more demand across the system.
Sounds like some good career opportunities, by the way. It's great. Thank you so much. I'm going to ask our youth panelists, Braden, the next question. And kind of a follow-up to what we were talking about earlier. What do you recommend parents look for and know when it comes to their teens and preventing anything, and also just being concerned and just awareness overall?
I look for a sense of detachment. So from my experience to my friends, like when they start getting into this, they feel the sense of like, it's almost like a guilt with themselves, and they're trying to justify it, and their friends will never justify it for them. You know, if their friends are really their friends and like close people to them, they're going to try and pull them away. They're going to do the best thing they can for them. And if your teen is that trying to experiment, you know, like trying to use, they're going to start detaching. You're going to want the best for your kid. So they're going to try and detach from you in trying to, you know, use. So when you get that sense of detachment and you start seeing that like guilt, they're going to have a little bit of nerves around you. Those are just some things that you can look for. And that's just with a lot of things too. That's not just with substances, but you know, substances is one of those things where they're never going to want to go to you, say, I'm using right now, because what are you going to, you're going to stop it. Most likely. I don't know, it's your judgment, but they don't want to stop. And that's the hard part for them. So that sense of detachment, being nervous, a lot of other things too, but I would just go with those two things. It's like, it's small things too. And if like it's in their, like in your presence, I just go with like loopy, like they get really nervous. It's in your presence from what I've seen. So.
Thank you, Braden. And thank you to everybody. While we don't have all the answers tonight, I think this discussion is helping to arm our community members and with accurate information, and even to look further for some of the strategies to prevent these tragedies. So what we'll do is we will, and thank you so much, Laura, and just so appreciate you bringing us all here tonight. And just
thank you very much. And if I could just say one last thing, and everybody has been incredible. If all these resources are amazing, and I guess the main thing that I wanted to make sure that I, you know, in sharing Zach's story, is that with fentanyl and these fake pills, it often robs you of having any precursors or having those kinds of signs, you know, that there is an issue. Zach and his dad and me, we had very good communication. And with these fake pills and the way they're marketed to kids, it changes it all. And before you can even know there's a problem or intervene, they can take one pill and their life is gone. And so that's really what I want to make sure people understand as well, that how important it is that we all know about these fake pills and the accessibility.
thank you. And having the tough conversations that are so critical. Thank you, Laura, so much. And just like Laura and everybody communicated, having these conversations without judgment is so important. Creating a safe space for adults and children and adults, because this affects adults too, to feel comfortable that they can discuss their challenges and feelings without necessarily needing anything. Like Jamie said, just to be there and listen can be the best gift. And we also know when it comes to trauma, for children and teens, having a trusted adult figure to talk to is a critically important protective factor to mitigate the mental health impacts of trauma and other stressors. So mentoring adults have a vital role more than ever. So if any of you have that opportunity to be that for a young person, for an adult, for a senior, everybody, we all need people. We all need hugs, don't we? You know, we've missed our hugs. And so I just want to say in closing here that thank you all, and thank you to Granite Wellness Centers for hosting, and everybody behind the scenes. We have amazing Shelly Rogers, yoo-hoo, and Serenity and Renee. You guys are awesome. Everybody to help make this happen and to make sure that we can help prevent any losses, any more losses. Thank you to our panelists and to you attendees for making the time tonight. Our heartfelt condolences go out to you and Chris for your deep loss. We can't do anything to bring him back, but we really appreciate you helping going forward to save lives. And just, yes, perfect. And again, from the number of attendees tonight, we know that there are so many people that are concerned, and we want to make sure ultimately that we've helped reduce the stigma around drug use experimentation or misuse, because we don't want any barriers to prevent anyone from reaching out to get help. This could be just the conversations, creating that space. It could be reaching out for mental health support. It could be reaching out for medication-assisted treatment or other drug and alcohol treatment, asking for test strips or Narcan. Any of those options could be something that you need that we will make sure you get the resources for, that we will send in an email following this meeting. And we hope that you review the resources, really take them to heart, and please share it with others. So thank you again, and good night, everyone. Bye.